My name is Mawano Kambeu, and I am the founder and managing director of Dot Com Zambia PLC. And yes, I did say PLC. It's my pleasure to share our story. And by the end, I hope you will join us for the next chapter of that journey as we prepare to list on the Lusaka Securities Exchange. The story of Dot Com Zambia actually began back in 2006. Over the years, we evolved from early online shopping to e-commerce to technology such as bus ticketing. So let's fast forward to 2017. Back then, if you passed through a toll plaza in Zambia, there was only one way to pay: cash. We saw an opportunity to fix that. And so we built something new. It was a prepaid e-toll system with smart cards that replaced cash payments. Over time, as adoption grew, DotCom Zambia would become the largest e-toll manager in Zambia. In 2025, we're on track to cross 620 million in revenue. So join us for that next chapter of our journey. Be part of what comes next.
هل وصلت بالفعل؟ أنا على وشك النزول من الطائرة. هل نسيت الخطة مرة أخرى؟ دعني أكررها لك مرة أخرى.
Yes, that's right.
أولاً سنقوم بتسجيل الدخول إلى الفندق. لا تنسى طلب وجبة الإفطار للغد من مكتب الاستقبال. في اليوم الثاني سنذهب لتذوق المأكولات المحلية والقيام ببعض التسوق.
Dun 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 dun.
For me, this is one of those very extremely exciting episodes because this is somebody I've known for so many years. He has at some point disappeared from all our lives, and he'll explain why a little later. But the late Elson is finally here. People call me insensitive when I call him the late Elson, but the guy is always late.
He is late.
What should I do? Elson, welcome.
Thank you.
Jen, hello. How are you? I'm good, thank you. How are you?
You've joined the conversation at a very good point. We're just basically starting, and just give me a shout out to our sponsors. You can start with Techno.
Yeah, thank you so much to Techno, our tech partner who has been with us for it's going to be a year now, ain't it?
No, not Techno at all.
You look like a referee, bro.
He actually does.
I'm anticipating a fight between you and him, so I need to be dressed like a referee.
Either a referee or you've worked in Foot Locker.
Anyhow, Techno.
Yes. I don't know if I've told you that Techno is actually sponsoring the CAF tournament.
Africa Cup.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Happening in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
I had a horrible task to choose someone to go to Morocco. And it was a toss-up between an influencer who has got 1 million followers on TikTok, knows all about soccer, and someone who doesn't have as much of a reach, but then
knows everything about soccer.
Right. So
I would go with a soccer fan.
Yeah.
What would you?
No, I would go. You want authenticity.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
He's going to add more value.
Yeah.
She's going to add more value.
Why are you sexist, bro?
I know.
Why are you assuming it's...
I know, right? I apologize to...
Too late.
Whoever she is.
Too late.
Anywho, big shout out as well to our sponsor who's been with us going to 2 years very soon. That's Big Tree Beverages Limited. As you can see, this is the... one of the mocktails that many of us love so much, the Pina Colada that's displayed at the back here. And they've got 4 of them. Mawano, I don't know if you've tasted the strawberry lime crisp.
I love these drinks, and Big Tree, clients of mine as well. So, hey, look, we're among friends here.
How are they your clients?
Their fleet, when they pass through the toll plazas, we basically manage that entire process for them.
So Big Tree specifically, or anybody who passes through?
No. Well, no. So, one of the things we talk about is we're the largest ETO manager in the country. But what that means is when we look at all the clients we are managing, everyone from Zambia Sugar, Zambeef, Big Tree, Trade Kings themselves, Shan Carriers, all of them, the way they manage their ETO expenses is done through our company.
So they've got ETO cards and...
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Our guest today, for those of you who don't know, his name is Mawano Kambeu. Became quite popular at some point, like 10 years ago. You were all over social media, then you just disappeared.
For what?
.com Zambia is going to explain. And Mawano, for somebody who doesn't know you, knows nothing about you.
What was he popular for?
We're getting to that. For somebody who doesn't know you, knows nothing about you, Elson, chill. Who are you? What do you do, and why should people listen to this episode today?
Okay. Well, that's actually a good question. Let me try and do the question justice here. But I've been an entrepreneur basically for the last 19 years. I started a company called Dot Com Zambia, started as an e-commerce company. Over the years, it's a company that has evolved and grown. So I think when you talk about sort of visibility in the marketplace, I think there was a period of time where I think when you're an entrepreneur trying to make your name, one of the most annoying things you get is going to people's offices and they're like, where are you from? So part of it is, who are you? So part of it is you got to brand yourself. And I think I did that in years gone by, went very quiet, but now we're sort of back. And a lot of the reasons for that is I'm basically taking my company public. The company I started is going public. And that's been considered historic for a number of reasons. One, we're going to be the first company to be listed on the alternative exchange, on the Lusaka Securities Exchange. And I think it's also the first time where a company started by really a Zambian entrepreneur, started from nothing, has grown to the size and to the scale where it can actually go public. So, I think that's really, I'm talking about 19 years. I mean, we met a couple of weeks back and you started telling me that, hey, we met 10 years ago. And it took me a while to jog my memory. Then I started to recall that, oh my goodness, it was at an entrepreneurship convention.
Yes.
You were pitching.
And I
was one of the judges.
Yes.
And then I started to remember that you won that competition.
Yeah, I won.
Hands down. First of all, I remembered that you won it hands down. Like it wasn't even close. And I even remember thinking to myself that, you know what? He is so polished. Why are they letting him actually enter this competition? It wasn't even fair. And so to go on and see you over the years achieve what you've achieved, how this platform that you've built has grown. I think kudos to you as well. But I think what people look for when they want to hear from, not sort of, this is how I started with One Rice, but I think they want to hear stories of, those are the guys that are, that have been doing perhaps what we would like to do. Or what? I can relate. If they're talking about how hard entrepreneurship is, I can listen to it because look what he's talking about. 19 years. Started 19 years ago.
How old were you when you started .com Zambia?
That was 2006? I would have been 23 going on 24.
So Elson, that's why he became popular because .com Zambia seemingly came from nowhere to do what they were doing then, he will explain. And I think for a guy 23, you were relatively young. And you made waves like headlines. Everyone was talking about this company that seemed to have come from nowhere, this young guy. You came from America then, right? You had just come back.
I had come. So I actually started .com Zambia technically in America. And it was something I was building in America. And then I said, okay, at least I've got something to go. Cause I always wanted to come back home. And, we can talk about that in a lot more detail, but I'm in America. I'm a student and I'm like, I need to go back home. I want to go back home. And I even remember trying to come back home and trying to find a job. That did not go well. The environment is harsh out here, but I said, at least I've built something that I can now focus on 100% of the time. And that was .com. And when I focused on it 100% of the time, I started making a lot of waves and, everything from winning competitions at Harvard to winning global entrepreneurship summits to then obviously going on and raising the big money from Kukula Capital and eVentures Africa Fund, which
you know who gave him the money?
Gito.
Yeah.
So I actually want to speak about that, right? Because the little that I know about .com is, you guys did partner with Kukula, and you guys got some money out, and you were, for lack of a better word, a shipping company. Right. And so, I'm going to throw a couple of things out there. Correct me where I'm wrong, but that really didn't make any money, for lack of a better word.
It was me. Yeah. So the origins of .com Zambia was actually the e-commerce business. I was a student. So as you know, if you're a student, you're kind of outside, you travel to Zambia. One of the most common things that happens is people give you orders. Bring this for me. Hey, I saw that on Amazon. I saw that on eBay. The only difference between me and everyone else is it was enough of a trend for me to say, you know what? How can I turn this into an actual business? Because there seems to be something going on. And we're talking about 2006 here. And there were two things that I quickly picked up on. One, people wanted goods that were not available in Zambia. The second, they couldn't pay. This was pre-bank cards when, all the bank cards today are debit, Visa enabled. So I basically started building a whole system to do that. I actually even remember my first customer was Blockbuster Video back in 2006. So that was sort of how it began, and I grew it, and I actually grew it to about $1 million by 2012. My revenue then was about $1 million.
Oh, what was your profit?
Pardon? There was no profit. I was reinvesting everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And
because it sounds kind of good when you say my revenue was $1 million.
Yeah. No, but I mean, and that was the reason why I needed venture capital funding, because when you're saying this is what I want to build, and if you know sort of financial structures and, you know what you want to do. I had been borrowing money from the bank, but banks only borrow to you for three reasons. One, banks will give you money when you don't need money. They'll give it to you if your collateral is big enough, or they'll give it to you based on your financials. So I sort of knew that, if I'm thinking about tech, I'm thinking about expansion, I'm thinking about building systems like this. If I'm going to do that, I can't go to a bank. I can't go to my friends. I'm going to need venture capital money. And that was sort of how that, transition, started to come about. You are right. The e-commerce business did begin to shift. It's a business that we're not actually in anymore, but that was sort of the origins of sort of the original .com, if you will. We were an e-commerce company.
Right. So Kukula gives you money, to start this, and you're not making any money back.
Yeah.
And so did they get a return on their investment?
No, actually, they gave me $500,000. In 2 years, they lost all that money.
What?
Yeah,
I remember you made headlines when that money came through.
Yes, yeah.
How do you lose all of it?
Oof. It was a combination of a couple of things, just, a circle of things well, first and foremost, they gave that money to me in 2015. What was the kwacha trading at? If you can remember back in 2015,
10?
No, it was not even 14. No, it was 5.
5 kwacha?
It was literally 5 kwacha to the dollar. The money came in, hit our money in kwacha. All of a sudden, the kwacha goes into free fall. That was sort of like the first external shock to sort of hit us. That definitely did impact us. Second sort of factor that came in is when you take money from venture capital, and I think I'm better at it now, but when you take money from VC investors, they come in and they start telling you how to restructure your company.
Oh, that's happened to me.
Yeah. They tell you, okay, bring in an account to do this. You're going to need a compliance person. And I think one of the early mistakes we made is we started hiring way too many people way too quick before the money was actually coming in. And looking back, and I can't even say this because now I hire people differently, but there was a lot of, very expensive people with very fancy degrees that just didn't add anything to the business. So as soon as the investment came in, first and foremost, it reduces because the kwacha just free falls. Then now you've got this huge cash burn coming in. And you've got all these overheads to pay and all these projects. And then the flagship project we were working on at the time, bus ticketing, that was just not picking up traction. Great business model. It even makes sense today because the issue I tried to solve back then, still an issue today. That whole thing of you want to travel by intercity, you go to intercity. I mean, I had a family member here a couple of weeks back. What did I have to do? Go to intercity the day before on a Friday, buy the ticket, take them back on Saturday morning. You sort of ask yourself, why can't I do that electronically? So a combination of all of these things. I mean, we had built a call center, we had registered shortcuts. So there was a lot of cash being burnt. I had a whole marketing team. And by 2 years in, money was pretty much gone. I was paying salaries out of my pocket. I was now moving into personal bankruptcy. So yeah, it was a wild time.
So do you still owe Kukula money?
No. Oh no, they're good now.
How so? So
what happened is by 2017, we were in a pretty perilous situation. But, so we had to sort of have a bit of a I remember we had a number of meetings and they had a decision to make. They could either say, you know what, let's just cut our losses and just pull out of this investment completely. Or you know what, we can re-up and we can give him more money. There are a couple of things he's working on. things that perhaps may take. So, what are we going to do? And ultimately they decided to say, you know what, let's go back in. I think the stuff that he's working on, and don't forget that this was not happening in isolation. If you're a funded company, you're having you're having quarterly board meetings, you're sending them monthly reports, you're telling them, hey, look, plan A, plan B is not working, but look, we've got plan C, plan D, plan E. This is what I'm trying to do, to keep the ship afloat. Yeah. So ultimately they made a judgment call to say, you know what, if we pull out, then we're guaranteed to lose our money. Yeah. But if we stick with him, then possibly he might. Yeah.
So which sort of leads, it's a segue to my next question, which is your decision to make the company public, not just a money grab, because now you need to raise capital because you still need to pay back,
venture capitalists,
the venture capitalists. Yeah. So it's sort of like a two-part question. Yeah. So that's question A. B is, you seemingly came out of nowhere, right? Yeah. To me, hearing about just the NRFA project that you're doing, do you have any other revenue streams apart from what you have with the government?
Absolutely. All right. So the first question is, when you take, and this applies to anyone. Yeah. If you take money from another party, the conversation you are going to have is, how can I give you a return on investment? And generally, when you take money, there are three ways you're going to give any investor a return on investment, especially for what we call private money in Zambia. The first method is you're going to tell them that, you know what, I'm going to grow the company where it's big enough that someone's going to want to buy you. That's always conversation number one. Conversation number two is going to be, we're going to go onto the stock exchange. That was a conversation we started having years back, but at the time it wasn't really being taken seriously. And there were issues for that. There's no liquidity. No one is listing. That's not an option we can entertain. The third option is you start making enough money. You start paying them dividends. And that dividends is enough to sort of justify the money that they pumped in. And so, like, for example, this year, and I think this will come out, we're going to make about 15 million kwacha in profit. We've paid about 5.4 million in dividends. So you can look at it and say, look, what are we going to do? Are we going to stay where we are, stay in our lane, and our investors are going to get their return that way? But there are a lot of reasons why the IPO started to make sense, including just saying that, you know what, if we're thinking about not ourselves, but the broader Zambian economy, let's do an IPO. And so people that will look at what we're doing with the IPO, one of the questions I'm getting very early on is, okay, you guys have made 15 million kwacha in profit. You're about to raise 12 million kwacha. That it's not adding up, because you could probably call a bank tomorrow and they could probably give you a couple of million. You could call private investors. They'll definitely give you money. Why are you going that route? And I think the answer to that is there are a number of strategic reasons we've chosen to do the IPO, in addition to just, we think it's the greater good. It's the better thing to do, especially I think for the ecosystem, the Zambian business ecosystem. And to your point, do we have other products that we do work on? Yep, absolutely. And I think part of our forward thinking is what else can we do, especially as a public entity. So whether it's the ideas we have with existing intellectual property that we have, whether it's the work that we're doing in the fuel industry to say this is what we can try and do to really increase the size of our business. But let's also not take away from our core Ito business. That's a business we feel is just going to continue to grow.
I don't think you've answered my question, though.
For somebody watching this and not understanding what we're talking about, Elson brought up the issue of NRFA. You've mentioned Ito.
Itos, yeah.
No, hold on. Yeah. You still haven't answered my question.
Yeah, sure.
The money grab.
No. Yeah. Well, that's. Because you still haven't told me if it's a money grab, because you still need to pay back your investor. And B, what apart from NRFA that we know are you doing?
Okay, sure. All right. So the money grabs. The money is a byproduct of what we are doing. For example, I started with 100% of .com. I think by the time this IPO is done, I'll probably have about 40% ownership. Going from 100% to 40%, I've made no money off that. Part of that is when you take money, the money is generally invested back into the company. So the only money grab that occurs is if you now say we're going on the stock exchange and we're now going to basically put all our shares up for sale, and that is it. But actually the Lusaka Stock Exchange actually has rules that prevent you from doing that. Things like a director restriction. I have insider information. So if I know something right off the bat and I'm like, let me cash out, it's to stop you from doing that. So I think that is what generally would occur. Now, am I going to make make money at some point, if the company grows to which is my objective, then absolutely. Hopefully those shares that, that I have, the shares that other investors have will grow exponentially from where they were when we first started, which was nothing, to sort of where they are now and where they'll continue to be. From a product perspective, we do have a product called e-fuel, so which is basically a fancy way of saying paying for your fuel electronically. We also have a project that we work on.
How does that work?
Pardon?
Is this to, who are you selling to? Are you selling to gas stations?
No, we're selling it to our B2B, our customers. So if they want to buy fuel, we have relationships with particular gas stations, fuel companies that were basically almost like their agent, if you will. But part of that is also trying to redefine to say, this is how currently the industry works. This is how perhaps we can add our little spin and add value. And a lot of that might be, and I don't want to sort of corner, but if you've ever used any of sort of the electronic fuel methods, some of them, even in terms of how they do their reporting, the dashboards that you look at, the business intelligence, there's definitely gaps there. And that's something that we've been eyeing, even the actual way to pay. So that's something that we've been having a lot of conversations around. And part of it is and this actually began because a lot of the fuel companies said, hey, we hear that you're doing quite well in the electronic tolling space. I understand you've got this client, that client. Can you introduce us? And I said, well, I'm not going to introduce you. If you want to sell fuel to someone I have a relationship with, tell me and I will. And I think this is a rule for anyone. If you've got clients, those are your strongest assets. That relationship, that's your strongest asset.
So the e-fuel.
Yep.
Because the reason why I ask, is basically that once you go public, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard you mention two so far, and one is NRFA.
Yeah.
Where's the bulk of your revenue coming from?
No, it's coming from e-tolls, from electronic tolling.
Yeah. So if Kalenga buys shares and tomorrow the government terminates your contract, I'm trying to figure out what revenue streams you have apart from the contracts you have with the government, because those are not set in stone. We know companies that in the previous government were getting contracts from every single ministry. And today, they have lost every single one of those contracts. I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about.
I'm very sure who you're talking about. Yeah. Look, I think it's a fair question. And actually, it's one of the things that we have to address. How do we know that, come next election, change of government, that, hey, you guys are going to go belly up. And I think there are a couple of reasons. One of the things we like to talk about is we are at a point, especially I think with the electronic tolling business, I think we've reached a point of stability where we are relatively, now we're not going to say too big to fail per se, but I think we've established a foothold. Now, why do I say that? If you look at the, sort of the data surrounding that, if we look at all the collections happening electronically with NRFA, we do basically over 50% of the electronic tolling collection. Second, the client base that we have, well over 300, we have relationships with them. So what you're talking about is government wants to come in today and they want to say, hey, you guys are done. It's just not a decision that doesn't affect us. It affects a whole chain of counterparties. And what I mean by that is I have a relationship with your company. We have particular agreements. We've integrated your system into our system. That's not that's not an easy thing to unbundle. The other thing that I will point out is the roads are no longer owned by government anymore. Some of them are now private. In fact, the dual carriageway all the way up to...
But the tolls are still owned by NRFA.
No, they're not. They're now owned by private parties. So now it's a mixture of government and private parties. And those private parties, we are actually responsible for 100% of their toll collections. Why? We gave them the systems to do it. My second and third biggest competitor, because we do have competitors, they're running off our systems. So, and I'm fine with that. You make money, but you're paying me a royalty off the business that you are doing.
For using your system.
They're using our systems,
NECO.
Yeah.
They used to run that, didn't they?
No. So NECO run what's called so a number of companies under the scenes, behind the scenes, they run what's called like the actual individual toll plazas, but it's very fragmented. So if you go to one toll plaza, the non-electronic payments, the cash payments are done by NECO. Yeah, they're in silos. Yeah. One is done by NECO. You go to one other particular toll plaza, it's run by a South African company. Go to another toll plaza, it's a Chinese company. Yeah.
So what is NECO running?
NECO is running at some of the toll plazas. They are running the desktop, the cash-based system. Not the electronic system.
But all of them have to run through your system.
If they're doing it electronic, no. If they're doing it we only handle the electronic tolling component. So
if I'm driving from here to Kitwe and I'm using my toll card, that's you behind the scenes working.
Yeah, yes. So that was the system
that's the background I want to give our viewers.
That was the system we built back in 2017. I built that system.
That's the background.
Every architect of it, I did that. What then happened was we then became basically a distributor. That was what we wanted to do. So they, NRFA came in and said, okay, you've shown us how to do it, and there were agreements to how we made that happen. Now, okay, we're going to build our own. And I think that's where the pro-base sort of came in.
I never said pro-base.
I've said pro.
Yes, you did.
I've said because effectively that was what happened.
Shout out to Roy.
Shout out to Roy.
And his great beard.
Yeah.
So that was effectively the history. So one of the things, people do not know is, yes, myself personally and my engineers, we built what is now the electronic tolling system.
That's the background. I wanted our viewers to understand. We keep talking about e-tolls. So whenever you're using the cards at the toll gates,
yes, they're
behind it. That's .com Zambia working behind that.
And just want to fire off a couple of more questions because again, so I'm in the IT space,
correct? Yeah,
right. And I'm a developer.
Yeah.
Going back to .com and you...
So funny enough, just to interrupt, I'm actually not a developer. My background is actually capital markets.
I know. And this is why I say shout out to Roy, because you and Roy...
in a space that you didn't study for.
Right. Where you run IT companies, but you're not actually
IT guys,
a developer. I have a couple of questions based off that.
Yeah.
Number one, how do you protect your IP?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. How do you stop somebody from tomorrow, they run away with your code?
The short answer is you can't. There is actually no patent in IT. I know people think that. I remember when I started doing the bus ticketing project, the number of people came to my office. No, but I've been doing a bus ticket. I'm going to take you to and see you. No, there is actually no intellectual property protection in IT. That should sort of be common knowledge. Partly because if you think about what IT is, it's basically a process by which you can get from A to D. But it's not always the same process. So very few companies would go to the trouble of saying, you know what, we've invented a new way of doing, and if you think about it, you can't patent a process. You can't patent the process of buying a bus ticket. You can't patent the process of money transfer. You can't patent those. The only thing you can do is make your own solution, make it better than the person next door, and just be first to market. And there are certain things you can do down the road that will give you a certain level of protection. So for example, you can actually enter the e-toll business right now. There's nothing stopping you. But the thing you would have to say is, okay, there are competitors in the market. How am I going to compete? They're well established. They're well funded. What am I going to do that's different? And that's where the challenge comes in.
Who owns your source code?
Pardon?
Who owns your source code?
We do.
By we, you mean .com?
.com does, yes, because we built it from the ground
And you're not a developer?
Pardon? And I'm not a developer, correct.
So you hire developers to do that.
Developers,
so how do you protect them from getting your source code?
No, when you go and work for an IT company, what tends to happen is when you become basically in your contract, it says that anything you build, anything you think of becomes intellectual property of the company. And you are right. And but the question you're asking,
you're talking lawyers and papers.
No. But what you're asking for is, what if one of our employee leaves and says, I'm going to take
the source code?
That's exactly what my question is.
Yeah. No, they can absolutely do that. But what are they going to do with it? Start another e-toll company?
Possibly.
They could, but the reality is it's not about, and this is what your question was, how are you guys in IT that are non-IT background running IT companies? How did you model? You're not a developer. How did you invent or how did you build the e-toll system? And the answer is it's just about you look at a problem and you now tell yourself that this is how I'm going to fix that particular problem. And in fixing that problem, it's not only an IT problem, it's actually a business process problem.
I completely agree with you. Again, my point still goes to the fact that the same thing that you saw in this developer, another person like you will see in that developer.
Correct.
And they have this source code.
Correct.
You understand? Because you're not the first person that came up with this.
Absolutely.
Probase was there.
Yes.
You came.
Yes.
And you're not going to be the last.
No, I came and they came after.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
There's going to be a third and a fourth and a fifth.
Correct. Yeah.
Whether in Zambia or elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it still goes back to my same question.
Yeah, no. Here's the best example that I could give you. Absolutely. And I think you see this with IT guys all the time. And I notice this a lot with IT engineers. They're always building stuff. I've got this great idea. And a lot of them tend to think in silos. What you tend to find, and I have this problem with IT guys that I've hired over the years, is they do not understand business processes. Even something as simple as what's a standard operating process? How will this work? How are we going to control risk? That's the sum of all parts. How am I going to bring it to market? How am I going to get my clients to be comfortable enough to demo it? What if it fails? Who's going to take the risk of that? Not knowing that there are all of these moving parts. So you are right. They can take the source code, but what are they going to do with it? And then, but sell it to who? And then here's the thing. Remember that this is a process. It's about moving. And the thing is, technology is always evolving. One of the reasons I do not want to be involved in the technology on the ground is that it's forever changing. So they can steal it, but it will be obsolete in a year. Already, what's everyone talking about now? AI. So now we got to think about how we're going to put AI into our systems. But the one part that never goes away is your relationship with your clients and how you service them. That is always going to be a most valuable commodity. So when I talk about, hey, look, I want to move into the fuel business, part of that confidence is not me saying that I'm going to be better at fuel than anyone else. It's me saying that, you know what, I'm doing this IPO and it's written in the prospectus that I'm going to make some of my clients shareholders. Why? Because I want to do 1 billion kwacha in fuel in 3 years. But if I make some of my clients shareholders and I tell them and I look at them and say, guys, combined, do you know you guys are doing 50 million in fuel? You are now my shareholders. If we gather together and, we could gather up, we can now do 600 million kwacha just like that instead of 1 billion over 3. So there were strategic reasons to doing that, because the most important thing is basically your client base and what you can do. And even now, some of the things that our clients are telling us to do, crazy. So they'll come and say, oh, so now, can you do X and Y? Let me give an example. I want to be very specific here. So they're telling us that, okay, you know what? When our trucks leave the yard, okay, the biggest expense after diesel is tires. A truck will leave with 16 tires. And when it comes back, 8 of them will become secondhand tires. And if we've got a fleet of X amount, we can't keep up with that. We trust you. Can you build a solution for that? Now, when you move to a different level of your business sector, that's where the conversations begin to go. So when you think about what are we thinking R&D wise, where are the opportunities? These are the conversations that we are having. And it's not to say that someone else can't do it. They absolutely can. But do they have the credibility? Do they have the network? Because I can tell those clients that, you know what? I will fund this. It will come out of my pocket. Let's make it work. Once we commercialize it, then I'll sell it to the broader public. Let's have that conversation. And I think that's what makes us different, because you're absolutely right. You cannot, and would tell this to anyone in IT, you cannot patent an idea, and you cannot patent code. So it's just how you can execute and your reputation to do it.
Have you heard of SpeedPay?
I have, yes.
You have?
I have.
Do you know the similarities in what you're doing and what they're doing?
I do.
You know what's so crazy is I don't know why whenever I get here, suddenly my phone starts ringing off the hook.
Somebody feels that I need to disturb you. And I think he's on a podcast right now.
Right. So you do know the similarities between.
I do. Okay. Yeah. But that's like trying to say the pie is not big enough.
Hey, listen, I just asked you if you know them. That's all.
Yeah. No, I do know them.
Right.
Okay.
There've been articles in the past 2-3 weeks about the IPO coming up, and of course, numbers have been flying around about how much .com Zambia has been making.
Yeah.
About 600 million kwacha a year. You guys are making now. Is that true?
That is true. Yes.
600 million kwacha revenue.
We went, basically we did 17 million in 2017, about 30 million in 2018. Last year, 530 million.
Company's making
this year,
money.
630. But what you have to remember, and I think this is a lesson to everyone, is you've got to know how the industry works. Okay. We're in the financial technology business or fintech business. So it's all about large numbers and small margins, profits. So I even remember when we wanted to go on the alternative exchange, they have a rule that if you want to go on the alternative market, you shouldn't be making more than 25 million kwacha in revenue, So by that definition, we should have gone on the main board. But they came back and said, okay, well, by our other definitions, you are, a relatively small company. So I think you fit here. And if we start looking at the pass through from that 600 million, whatever, you've made about 25, 30 million. Then you sort of your expenses and your profits are from there. So I think we need to keep that in mind that, as big as the numbers are, you've got to look at the type of industry that you are in to really understand them. And I think that speaks to financial literacy, because our margins might be 2-3%. A manufacturer might have a different income structure, and so that's what you've got to keep in mind when you look at our numbers. So I think for us, the goal is not so much where we are now. We even know that, look, we're doing 630 million this year. We know that next year we're going to do over 800 million just because of the budget changes, Yeah. So we know all of these things, but it's all about what are we going to do long term and what can we do, especially now that we are, hopefully going to be a lot more visible in what we do.
Right.
What we can do, getting the public behind us, or people now saying, oh, that company can do this and that. Hey, I've got an idea for it. And that's been the challenge of when you do things quietly, no one knows what you're doing. And that's a bit of a two-way street. I loved it because I love the privacy, but it's a two-way street.
So when do you go to IPO?
Hopefully over the next couple of days. I mean, I think we're very, very close.
Okay.
So yeah, we hopefully, I think even by the time this airs, we should be well into our IPO. Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah. So I think by then we should be. Yeah.
Have we met? Your face is familiar.
I get that quite a bit. What's been happening a lot these days, and it's funny, and I think you did as well. Everywhere I go, everyone is always trying to recall. It was MTN. Yeah. Everyone is always trying to recall where they met me.
Yeah.
And it's been like, oh, you met me 10 years ago. Oh, you came to Unza and you spoke to us. Like, Tove, I had another meeting the other day where someone says, you were in my office in 2010. And initially that was a little bit weird, but I understand what people are trying to say. They're saying you didn't come out of nowhere. We know you.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, give us our money, we know that you're not some fly-by-night guy. Everyone is trying to connect. Oh, I bought something from you when you were an e-commerce company. Or I remember your bus ticketing days. So it just seems to be happening a lot nowadays where I know you.
Have you already spoken to it about when you pivoted from just being an e-commerce to?
Yeah, actually so even when I pitched, the team at Kukula, the eVentures team. And by the way, when it came to raising money, I must have talked to about 100 investors to try and raise that $500,000 that I raised.
Brad, let me tell you, that has been the story of my life.
Yeah. And I can tell them now that it's public, years after the fact, okay? How many of them do you think even had a remote inkling of interest in investing in me?
Zero.
Actually,
maybe
technically 98 said no. The 2 that ended up investing were technically the only 2 that had an interest. And even the way that they invested, because I was flying to the Netherlands to meet the eVentures team. So if you heard of the website like Booking.com, they're all the people behind that. Yeah. So I flew 3 times to the Netherlands to pitch them. And they were just like, Zambia, I don't know. We usually do our investments in the usual Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa. We've never done Zambia before. Kukula were like, but we've never done like tech before. So I actually introduced them. So it's one of those where you sort of like, you introduce them together and saying, hey guys, can you talk? And in them talking, they're like, okay, you know what? I think we'd be more comfortable if we did it as a joint investment. But they were literally the only 2 that said we are actually interested. And I was a little bit disappointed back then because I thought with my background, with my roots in the US, I should be able to raise money.
Yeah.
There were people here that I thought would easily give me the money. There were some high net worth people that I tried to have the conversation with, but those conversations were quickly, they're like, yeah, what money do you want? Yeah, I'll do that, but I want to own half the company.
Yeah. We get that all the time.
And what people don't understand is like, guy, I can't give you half the company. This is supposed to be round 1. This equity, I don't mind going from 100% to this percent, but if I give you everything, there's no room to keep raising more capital, So that's why even I gave the example with the IPO that I've gone from 100% down to I'm going to be at about 40%.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, depending on what we do down the road. But it just comes from this philosophy of I would rather own 10% of something massive than 100% of something small. And I can tell you, doing it alone, oh my goodness, that is hard. I'm sure it is hard. So the fact that I am able to bring in other people, they come in, they back me. and we can grow together. Even this IPO is about growing together. One of the things we're doing with this IPO is we're doing what's called a retail IPO, which is very different from how it's normally done. When you're raising money on the capital markets, you only go and see NAPSA and a few others. They give you the money, and that's pretty much it. Your day is done. I've said, no, I'm going to get from this person, that person, so that's sort of a retail. But the reason I want to do that is if you own a car, you own whatever, and I'm thinking about future innovation, who's the first person that's most likely going to not only use our products, but champion it? It's our shareholders. So when we talk about, the IPO was always a strategic tool to get us to where we were going to. This is sort of the moves you are seeing behind the scenes to make that happen.
Would you advise everybody SMEs to list the companies?
No, it's a very unique situation. It comes down to a number of factors. First and foremost, you got to have a business that is sort of IPO or stock market friendly. That's usually something that can grow, that you can scale. As an individual entrepreneur, you have to make the decision to say, this is what it's going to take for me to go public. Am I okay with it? For example, I'm going to have to put certain governance structures in place. I'm going to have to put a board together. So literally in my situation, 3 of my board members could have a meeting tonight, decide I'm not going to be the managing director anymore, and I'm gone. I know entrepreneurs who just do not want that. And I think if you speak with Kukula and their experience working with, SMEs and investing in businesses, they've always said that the hardest time they've had is with the entrepreneur themselves, not understanding that they've taken money and this is the contract. This is now what it means. It's no longer about you, and it's not even your company anymore. You can keep the title founder, but you're not calling the shots. No. Yeah. This is how it works. And that is not for everyone. The other issue, and probably the bigger issue as well, is especially I think with Zambian entrepreneurs, we want to stay hidden. And it's not about showing people that you do not have money as well, but it could be a frank conversation about just how hard compliance is and staying on top of everything. Like, it is literally crazy. What you have to deal with day in and day out. And I do not, and so you do get a number of people saying that, what? I'm just going to do my thing quietly, try and not get on the attention of the tax man.
Just survive.
And just survive.
Not create a legacy business.
And not create, and just do that. And there are people that are fine with that. But if you want to go public, you can. And and hopefully, the fact that we're the first to do it in 10, on the alternative in 10 years, it's either we are crazy, because you kind of have to ask yourself, why is no one doing it? Or are these guys really smarter than everyone else? Yeah.
This is how you're going to find out.
That's how we're going to find out. Wow. And that's why everyone is looking at us to say, how is this going to go down? And that will sort of test what happens going forward. So there is a bit of pressure from a lot of parties on how we're going to make this work.
Dude, your origin story.
Yeah.
I know your mom was a teacher. Dad used to work for the council.
Yes. Yeah. Dad worked for government.
His dad did everything. His dad was a barman. What else?
He was a police officer.
No, but
Mom was a criminal as well.
No, but in fairness, multiple hustles. Even today, someone is 3 things. But yeah, my mom was a teacher. My dad was basically civil servant his entire life. Worked for the forestry department. So yeah,
I'm not trying to count your parents' pockets, but teacher doesn't get that well paid. Civil servant.
No.
But then when somebody reads your bio, there's a lot of traveling to the UK. You did Harvard, and how do they afford all that?
Don't count his pockets.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
No. So I did spend a lot of my early childhood in the UK, but that was a time, if anyone can remember, and I think we're all around about the same age, right? So if anyone remembers the 80s, there was a lot of government civil servants who were being sent overseas to go for further training, whether it was the UK, a lot of them were going to the UK. And so my dad was a civil servant, and he was tapped on the shoulder. Hey, go and study in the UK. But I have a family. Can they come with me? And bam, off we went. We came back, after studies were done. My mother got her teaching degree, started teaching at Lechwe. And I was there by the blessings of being a teacher's child, not because I was at the same social standing as some of my colleagues, which was a bit rough. And, that was, so grew up in Kudu, but I grew up in the bush because of my father working for the forestry department. I grew up in Mwekera.
Yes.
Yeah, past Kamfinsa prison. It was a 10-kilometer walk.
In fact, you grew up where?
Mwekera.
Shut up.
He knows it.
You grew up where?
Mwekera. In fact, the kids there, they used to call me at Bansan. Out in
No, I like the accent that you put there. You put like a little...
But like the accent that you put there.
So anyone knows, it's 10 kilometers. It's past Kamfinsa prison, but it's 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
Vehicles were so rare that if you didn't have a government vehicle, you had to walk to the main road, the 10K.
And you would walk?
To get, sometimes, yeah. If dad was not around, you want to get into town, you had to walk the 10K to the junction and then and now I think they're minibuses, but back then there were not even minibuses. Yeah. It was those Hiluxes that they put benches in.
Yeah.
When was this? What
this
period
was
is this?
This was 92. Yeah, 92.
You know what's so crazy? I was having a conversation with my son. So my son is 8.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, like back then, I remember how... Like things are so different.
They were
between how things are now and how things were back then. We had the landline, we had the landline phone. If you ever wanted to see a girl, you would call. You would set a particular appointment to say, "Now listen here. At 5, you and I are going to meet at the giveaway sign."
Yeah. Those were the days where you'd walk the girl that you like, you'd walk her in the middle of the road, you get to her place, then you walk back. Then you walk back again. It was back and forth.
Do you know how lucky this guy's life has been?
No, I don't. Do you?
I mean, I'm thinking, like I said, their incomes were not the high. Yes, he ended up at the best schools in the country.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Just
by virtue of the mom being a teacher
I'm very blessed, because of that. Yeah. So I even won scholarships to go to the, to the US, but I couldn't take up any of those scholarships.
Why?
Because even if they gave you tuition, you still had to think about accommodation and things that I could not afford. So even the way that I went to the US, looking back at it
literally,
now,
you've been to Kitwe before.
I haven't,
Let's it's like the best school. Let's it's the best school like in the Copper Belt.
Where is Trident?
Let's
Where's Troy's Trident?
Sulawesi, yeah.
That's not the Copper Belt.
No.
That's up in Sulawesi. So he's talking about Kitwe. So if you grew up in Kitwe, if you were elite, the school you went to was Letchwe, basically.
Which is why I've always thought you were like a spoiled rich kid.
No. I was a teacher's kid. And that was hard for me because, when you're in an environment like that and you don't quite fit in, just because you're not at the same... Look, I came from a comfortable family. I cannot even come on and try and say, no, I went to bed hungry. No, none of that. But it was a very middle-class home. Right. But you're in an elite home.
Literally, I remember, rich kids.
I remember, trying to talk to a girl. She's very happy. Like, and I remember that she said to me, you're coming to see me on Saturday. What car are you coming with? And I'm like, car, driver. Like, I was going to come by bus. And she literally just didn't want anything to do, because as soon as they sort of find out that you're not really one of them, people would look at you differently.
That's my next question is, it kind of felt like you were doing well enough to be broke in a rich neighborhood.
I was. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I was very lucky because for the most part, I'd gone to the UK. So there was a certain degree of respectability. The hardest thing I remember about, and I don't even want to name because it's something that's quite prominent, is when the new money came to the school. The kids that couldn't speak, the English is a little bit off. Oh my goodness, the way people ragged on them. Please. The one thing about people with money, they let you know that you are and they do not let you forget it. Your parents just made money because of some shady deal. Now they've sent you here. We will rub it in and we will make sure So with me, I didn't get teased as much as some of the other.
Because of the accent?
Because of they're like, at least he's been to the UK. Because, you're talking about holidays where you come back from holidays and kids are talking about, I flew to the UK. I went to South Africa. I've come back with the latest Nikes. And, for us, it's like, but Smart Center. That's it,
He went to Australia and we've never heard the end of it.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know how,
please. I'm muting your microphone now.
Shut up. No, so instead of going what you think, is going, do you know how a Zambian has been overseas?
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
So I like to think but also I was very awkward. You can hear it now. I spoke with a lisp. I had glasses. I wore glasses. I started wearing glasses when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old. It was only later in life I had.
But a British accent is consolation enough. Bro.
And so it was up. But I think the one thing it taught me was, first and foremost, it's like, guys, you guys think you're better than me because you have money. And so for me, it became, no, you have to be better than me because you've earned it on merit. And so a lot of that. And so when, you sort of look at your psychological profile and whatnot, I've been told that's your psychological profile. You're very merit based. You have you like money, but you have a bit of a love-hate relationship with money. That's not your primary motivator because you've seen it, and because you never had it, you were just like, but if I'm going to be judged, let me be judged by the things that I am going to do.
Did all your siblings join at Letcher as well?
Yes, they did.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they did. They were all there.
When did you say you started DotCom?
Pardon?
When did you start .com?
.com was 2006. So when I was in America, and he's asking, how did your parents afford to go to America?
Finish his journey first before
Yeah. And the answer is,
how did you end up in America? Because you did say you couldn't afford to go.
I couldn't afford to go.
I couldn't.
I couldn't. Yeah. So the way I got to America, you should try to see if I can remember this story right. So I remember that I had scholarships to go. So when I graduated, but I couldn't go. We didn't have the money. So I sat at home for a while. So I worked a couple of odd jobs. I actually remember that one of my first jobs I did was I worked on the soap opera project, Cabanana.
Cabanana, yeah.
Scriptwriter, yeah. I worked 1 week, then they fired me.
Why?
On that.
You wrote a shitty script?
I think I was a little bit too loud in a way that I didn't quite understand the culture in the room. But I think they were getting ready for season 2. And I was a bit of a talented writer already. So like, hey, let's give them a shot,
1 week.
Yeah, because I kind of came in and said I didn't quite agree with the decisions that they were making for the upcoming season. They were a bit clichéic, I think there was a storyline where Jason Cabanana was supposed to make an Indian girl pregnant. And I'm like, but you've already done that with his older brother. And why can't we tell the truth? Like, let people feel like they're there. And then it just comes crashing apart, because in real life, that's what happens. A black man does not do, and yeah, they just felt that my tone was not.
Remember who else wrote for Cabanana? Ep197.
He wrote for it?
He did say, God, do I remember this correctly?
Yeah.
Ep197, I think he said it was like the youngest writer on Cabanana or something.
So I was there for a week.
And the Primsec for the Minister of Youth.
Yeah, he's now
What's his name?
Pilato.
No, the other one. There's 2 Primsecs.
That's the Jason I'm talking about.
That's the Jason I'm talking about.
Yeah. He was the guy who was supposed to get an Indian chick pregnant in the series.
That's what I sort of recall. So basically, I was just trying to find my way back then. And then what happened is, right now, I think we've got the Mandela Washington Fellowship. Yeah. But before that, there was a YMCA program that used to send Zambian to America. Yeah, to YMCA.
I think of Trump now when I hear YMCA.
Yeah. So I got into that program, but I kind of went into that program already knowing that, hey, look, I think I've got one family member in the US. After I do this sort of program, let me go there and let me go to school that way. And that was how it is. And I remember at the time, my parents, and part of it was based on a lie. People lie about overseas. They kind of sold that dream to me that, hey, you can go, you can sweep floors. Don't worry, let him come. He'll work a few jobs. He'll pay for his tuition in no time. So I remember my family put up everything that they had. A few other relatives came on and they sent me off, bought the plane ticket, couple of $1,000s. I remember I paid my first term's tuition, went to America.
Where in America did you go?
I went to just outside of New York, Connecticut. Or Connecticut. You've been there when you say Connecticut.
When was this?
This was 2002, just after 9/11.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was when I went. And the strange thing was, this was a time when it seemed that was when Zambians started to go to America. They weren't really going there in years prior, because I kind of feel, thinking back, we all started out round about the same time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I went to school for 1 term, actually hated school. Hated it. Only because I thought the way they treated me, they made me do remedial classes. Where that thing I did that first term and it didn't even count as a term.
Oh, Gob is laughing. And Virgin is laughing at you too.
No.
Well, Gob, you can relate to the remedial classes when you went to Malaysia.
Yeah. They made me do. Yeah. And I remember in my mind, I'm like, do they know how smart I am? And then they're making me go and do basic stuff. And what was, I think, irritating for me is that it didn't even count towards my degree. That whole first term.
Disrespectful.
And then I dropped, I dropped out at the end. That would be the first of me dropping out a couple of times. Cause obviously they've given you a couple of $1,000. You do start working, but it's just not enough. So by the end of that first semester, I dropped out of school, raised a little bit of money, would go back again, drop out again. And that sort of became the yo-yo.
The trend.
Yeah. So I talk about that. I went in 2002. I didn't graduate until 2009, but I'm not a doctor. So what was the whole yo-yoing?
Was it the same course that you were doing?
It was mixed. All I remember is I went to a community college first. Absolutely hated it.
HBCU?
Pardon?
Was it an HBCU?
No. It was just a normal, I think it was called, I don't want to, because I'm obviously ragging. I did not enjoy my time there.
That's
but
cool.
it was in, I would say it was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So generally they're a little bit cheaper, but I even remember being cheaper was still like $5,000, a term. That was still a lot of money. So in the way I had to go back to hustling and just try to make a living doing any odd jobs I can. Could have, so
you sold
the neighborhood, no. So the neighborhood I was in, I was in the hood. So you walked down, you could see who the drug dealers were, the Nigerians and the other, they were there. And I actually remember, one guy, when I was really broke, one of the shady guys brought books for me. He spent books were like $500. So I would go entire semesters without buying textbooks because they were that expensive. And I remember one time, a gentleman bought the books for me. And I just thought he was being nice. Hey, happy go, whatever, But I remember what looking back now, I can't figure out now what he was trying to do. So I remember he bought these books, and then that weekend he took us to a strip club, basically. And what he was doing, he was very clear about flashing how much money he had. So, when a guy pulls out wads of cash and he's got a whole crew with him and he's saying, stick with me, we could in there. Yeah. Now, one, I didn't drink. And remember my background before, okay, you're flashing money around. Okay, so what? So I'm just there because, dude, you bought me books, and I'm just there watching, and they're trying to give you the talk. Now, obviously I could see how they were, look, whether it was drug dealers, whether it was the Nigerian, running those 401k scams, running the credit card, you could see all of that. And you had a decision to make. Am I going to go back working in that factory? Which sucks. Or am I gonna, and look, and I think that applies to anyone here. Look, we've been blessed enough that we've never been perhaps desperate enough where your morals are, but those same morals will test people that are greedy and just don't want to do the work. If you say, that's an easy way, I'd rather do it that way. It might be illegal, but but I just said, I'm going to stay clear of it. And so I remember what they asked me to do. After they bought the books for me, they wanted me to, so they come to me and they're like, we've registered a company and we want you to be the CEO of that company. And I'm like, you want me to be the CEO of the company? Then you ask them, well, what company is this? I don't know. I can't even remember what it was, but it's like saying that, the name of the company is going to be Zambeef Trading. Okay. That sounds a little off, so go in bank accounts, but effectively they were running a lot of check scams and all sorts of stuff.
And you were supposed to be the face of this company.
I was supposed to be the face of it. So what they wanted in return, and I managed to sort of wiggle my way out of that and just say, I'm just going to go back to my.
You refunded them for the books they bought you?
I didn't refund them, but I think they left me alone because I kind of said I can't do it. And this was one of those moments where you say, oh, now what are you going to do? Yeah, but you told me it was a gift. No, Negro, really?
They didn't say Negro.
No, they didn't say Negro. They didn't.
More like MF.
But I think at the end of the day, just said, he's a harmless kid. Let him be. He wants to, be a straight arrow. We see him going to his little job, talking about going to school. And we
You're a delivery boy, yeah?
I worked.
UPS?
So one of the first jobs I worked was UPS. I would unload trucks. So when the trucks would come in from picking up all the packages,
right,
they had people that would work and you're only allowed to work 4-hour shifts because your back would be, it's one thing when you lift a couple of boxes and move them, but do it for 4 hours straight and you start to feel that. So I worked at UPS. I worked at a couple of factories, machine tooling. I did janitorial stuff, cleaning, basically anything that I could find in the beginning.
How old were you?
I was 20. That would have been same from 2002. In fact, the funny story that I tell, and people who lived overseas would know. I remember one of those factory jobs that I worked. My name was not Mawano. It was Joseph. So it was a little weird trying to be called. Come on now. You want, there are people out there trying to make, if I start giving away, sort of how we get by and how we make a living as
Your name
immigrants.
was Joseph?
My name was Joseph, yes.
Now, please share that story, bro. The Joseph story. I'm
So what happens is we looked out for each other. The immigrant community, we looked out for each other. So what would happen is a guy would call you up and say, hey, look, I've been called for a job, but I can't take it because I'm already working there. So I want you to go to that job do it for me as me, and then the thing is, America has a bit of, we talk about, and America is very hypocrite. They talk about illegal immigrants and whatnot. We don't want them, but they do want them. And they have systems in place to make sure that thrives. Because what they would do is, you might be a big company, but the way around it is you would say, you know what, we're going to subcontract. We're going to hire a subcontractor to do X and Y. They need to provide the labor. They're a smaller company. They don't have the liability we do. Now, them being small, it means they can take shortcuts, including hiring illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And that's how we would go in. And I would remember that one of those first jobs, this was a job that made me cry, because at that point, I just really wanted to come home. So they made us work. You're in this factory, and it's 3 days. I remember I had worked like 3 days, and it was 16-hour days. And the extra hours were supposed to be voluntary. That's what they told you, that no, you're going to do 16 hours, volunteer. But they would make it known that, dude, if you go home, don't bother coming back tomorrow. That was their definition of volunteering. Wow. And then someone wants to go on and say, oh, we don't need illegal. That's how the system worked.
But were you an illegal immigrant though?
No, I wasn't. No.
Okay.
But that was the way that I was treated. And that was what I knew. Because, you had to go in with your fellow, and had to find your way. And I had to make money for school. And people would look at me and say, but why are you putting all that effort into trying to make money for school? Like, if you just sat, you could take care of yourself. You'd have your paycheck, you'd have your little apartment, you could buy your little car, you'd be okay. And I kind of said,
really expensive there though.
But it is really expensive. And I said, no. I just got to keep at it. So every time I'd make a little bit of money, I'd go back to school. Money runs out. You'd play every trick you can to kind of get through. I remember I'd write a check for school, knowing it's a government school,
right?
Knowing by the time the check bounced, it would be 2 months later before they tracked me down. So that was my definition of a payment plan. So those were the early years, And then when they find out that your check bounced, then they'll tell you no. And it was hard. I remember some of the teachers were really good to me, because they would get a red notice to tell you this student should not be in class. So they would kind of whisper to you that, look, I've been given a red note, but I'm not going to kick you out of class. Can you just make sure, the next time you pay up and you sort this out? I mean, those were the shenanigans. And I remember a friend of mine did that. He ended up getting arrested. He sat in jail for a year for writing a bad check.
Your credit must have been shit.
Pardon?
Your credit.
My credit, it's good now, but yeah, back then, it was crap.
How many courses did you do?
No,
by 2009.
No, I was doing, so that was the thing. I wanted to just really get school over and done with and come home.
Right.
For me, that was the goal. Do school, come home. So I was doing a full-time load the entire time. So in addition to working, so at a certain point, the way my schedule was is I would wake up in the morning, work until, 17 hours, go to class until 18, from 18 to 22. Then I'd go home, I'd do the .com stuff, fulfilling his online order and doing my schoolwork so I would sleep 2-3 hours. And the thing I tell people that this was not 1 year. This was years. That became my routine, the norm. And adjusting to that was, and my career. So, obviously I started out in the factories, but my career did get better through inadvertent circumstances. I sort of ended up in white collar jobs and got into the mailroom of a financial company. There I am in the mailroom. Someone says, hey, I've talked to him a couple of times. I think he seems to be, let's try and get him into customer service. But they're like, but he doesn't have a degree and he doesn't even have any work experience. But let's give him a shot. And at the end of the day, he's still got to pass his broker's exam. So let's get him in. Yeah, gave me my shot, went into customer service. Customer service went into operations. I started selling investments on Wall Street. So all of that is I'm rising my earnings. And what was miraculous, and I say this, sometimes it's really weird. I had no idea how I was going to pay for school. It was a lot of money. Even the campus, the university I wanted to go to, we're talking about, I don't even know what the cost is now, but back then it was $18,000 a year. Ask someone to pay $18,000 a year. Ask a family from Zambia. It was just not, So it was only when I got hired then by that company through very weird circumstances. To this day, I still cannot fathom how it did it. But that company I joined paid my education throughout.
And you graduated?
Look at God.
Undergraduate, master's degree. Pardon?
Which degree?
I did my undergrad in marketing and then I did master's in finance after that. Because now I am. And sometimes it's very hard to even tell because you look at these moments, you're like, there I was, like literally, I'm in a factory somewhere working an 18-hour shift and I'm literally crying that I want to go home, but I can't say it because pride. Empty-handed.
You know what I mean?
I even remember.
What do you call America?
Yeah. And I even remember visiting
I heard
in
that.
2000.
I heard that. I understood that. You said you're going to go overseas and come back empty-handed.
And I even remember there was even a girl, there was a girl that left me for an older guy. It's just his young mind thinking, my first crush. And I even remember.
In America?
No, this was in Zambia.
Oh, right, okay.
Solwezi girl. So please avoid Solwezi girls at all costs because they're deadly. I don't even want to say her name because,
The switcher said it was her name, Natasha.
No, but I remember.
Did Natasha leave you for an older guy?
We were the same age. And she left me for like an older colored girl, whatever. And I remember I'm going to go to America and I'm going to make my fortune. I'm going to come and I'm going to show her and I'm going to show her. But that's the thinking you go into. How do you now turn around 2 weeks later to have come back? So there was a lot of pride that said no, but it was hard. It was brutally hard, emotionally, psychologically. I really did. And also I have to be guilty that when I did come back on holiday for the first time, which I'd been saving up, that first holiday, I'd been saving up. And when I got home, there's that, when you come home from overseas,
America.
He's from America. And even you're not afraid to show, your dollars here and there. And you let people think. So the funny thing that's happening is I'm there thinking, I want to come home. And they're there thinking, I want to go to America. And that was sort of how the dynamics are. But I was very fortunate because that holiday I took in 2006 was actually how .com Zambia started. Because someone was looking for a connection to say, hey, we need someone to do an online order for us. So it was Blockbuster Video that became my first client. And I remember they gave me $4,000. I did not have $4,000. I'd just blown it on that entire holiday trying to have a good time, and I'm back and I'm now got this order for $4,000. And I'm thinking, what the hell? But luckily enough, I was able to sweet talk them to say, can you pay me in advance? And they fronted it. And that was effectively how .com Zambia starting shipping all the DVDs that were in the Blockbuster. I think it was the one arcades, the one in Kablonga, and the one by Castle Shopping Mall.
So you would ship all those things?
Yeah, I would basically fulfill, find the orders for them, all the movies that they wanted, and I would ship them. And then what started happening is they started to say, hey, look, I saw this off Amazon, off eBay, add it to the order. And at that point, I really had to figure out, and that was basically how the whole .com e-commerce online shopping thing started, because I took a holiday in 2006. Yeah. But yeah, those were the America years for you. Like, yeah, I had to come up, and coming up I did. But my heart was always, I want to come home.
So yeah. Back to the tech for a second.
Yeah.
The e-commerce route that you took was pretty lucrative.
Yep.
Still is.
Yep. We actually sold that business for 1 kwacha.
I'm trying to figure out why.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when we did the restructuring around 2017, I know for me personally, it became hard trying to run 2 companies because we had an e-commerce division and we had a tech division. And it was like trying to run 2 things at once. It was just not happening. When we looked at how the e-commerce division had changed, it was not the same business I started back in 2000. So even the revenue that I talked about, that we went to $1 million by 2012, which looked very good for my investors. But after that, it started to decline. And the reason for that is we became more of a shipping and handling company. And the way to think of it is, in the old days, when someone wanted a phone, let's say the phone was $1,000, because I would see orders for $1,000. The way it would work is I would say, okay, here's $1,000. The phone is $1,000. I'm going to charge you a 10% handling fee on that. So I'm going to add $100 to that $1,000. And I'm going to charge you for the shipping and handling. That is how they would send me, $1,130. And that would become our revenue. Later, first of all, when shopping malls came out and I think, goods became more accessible, things began to change. People started getting their own bank cards. So what would happen now, that same transaction I described would just be, I'm buying the phone, I'm shipping it to your address, you're going to charge me $30 to ship the phone. So already the dynamics of the business began to change. And what the investors started to think was, look, it's a good business, but it's a good small business. It's not a scalable business. So what we need to do is, we're not going to shut it down. Tell all the employees that work for that, the senior guys, that they can start their own company. They can come back to us and they can buy the company for 1 kwacha. And they did. And that company's still around today, So even when I talk about doing the IPO and making sure my employees are part of this, that sort of came from there. So people would ask me, but you're not part of Clicker. You have no shares. You have no nothing. That business. I'm like, no, I don't. I support them. I love what has happened to them. The guys that run it still call me boss. Even though I tell them, please, you're directors now, like it's your company, you know, and yeah, they've ran with it. And so we did that to now focus on the tech, to say, look, I think we've got some ideas that we're doing in tech, including the electronic tolling system. But remember that the way that worked out was it wasn't a government tender that came where they came in and said, here's, you know, a couple of $1 million, do this. It was, okay, we're talking to everyone on how to figure out this problem that we have where we've got toll plazas and we can only collect money by cash. How can we introduce electronic tolling? And remember that one of the challenges, and this is where people that are good rise to the top, there were also challenges. These toll plazas were in the middle of nowhere. No power lines, no internet cables, no satellite. So people are coming in saying, yeah, I'll build you an electronic tolling system and I will charge you $2 million a lane to build you what we have in South Africa. Obviously, government is broke. So I was the only one that was actually talking practical sense. You know, and we talk about bus ticketing, but the happy ending with the bus ticketing is the tech infrastructure, the first generation, was actually based off our bus ticketing technology. The machines that were being used were what the conductors used to use to process tickets. The smart cards that we had were reward cards. So if you want to track how many times a passenger has traveled, have they traveled 2-3 times, the smart cards came from there. So all I did was, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make certain environmental changes. And one of the things that made me stood out is I started writing all the blueprint. This is how operationally it will work. This is how they'll do A, B, C, D. The law says this. Remember, I came from an ops background. So remember when I said it was not about the tech, it was around how the entire blueprint worked. So what they then did is they then said, okay, can you do a pilot and get a pilot up and running just to show us? Now that pilot had to come out of my pocket. So I had to go and fight. So so sometimes, and the history is there, I sometimes look at my friends when you hear that they got X amount in a government contract and they took that money and never showed up. Because I'm like, that's never happened to me. I've literally had to front the money for anything that I've done government-wise, including the system we do at the markets and bus stations for the council. So we do operate in councils, Lusaka Council, Mansa. We run the systems where they're supposed to collect the levy, the market levies, you know, because they heard what we had done and they're like, these guys know how to design like entire, let's tap them on the shoulder. Now, markets and bus stations is a whole other issue because as you can see now, I do not run intercity.
It's a whole other
That's a whole other topic. But all I will hint is in the 7 or 8 years that I've been running electronic levy, I've not been allowed to go anywhere near.
So the reason why I asked you that question is, why I say it's lucrative is, have you heard of Lipia?
I have, yes.
Do you know how much money they're making?
I do.
Tell me.
Not how much money, but how much they've raised.
No, how much money they are making.
No, I do not know how much money they're making.
Do you know Patumba?
I do.
Do you know how many members is on Patumba?
No, yes.
There's 1 million members.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
They process 6 million a day.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Reason why I asked that is because you let go of an e-commerce company, and now we have got a company like Lipia, which is an e-commerce platform and a payment gateway that is making a turnover of nearly 250 to 300 million a month.
Yeah.
Right. How then would you feel that this is not the direction that .com wants to take and then take a different direction?
So in the e-commerce space, we had tried a couple of different things leading to that decision. So for example, we had tried to build, I remember we tried to build what was called the Amazon of Zambia. Absolute pain. Trying to show individual people, this is how you do an e-commerce, but it was not moving. Also, there were signals across the other, like the African continent, that e-commerce was not working. A couple of businesses in Nigeria were struggling where big money had gone in. And even in Zambia, we were just not making any traction. So weirdly enough, when we talk about e-commerce in Zambia, there are only 2 types of e-commerce in Zambia that actually work, 3 that are actually working for various reasons. One is if you already have a brick and mortar store and you now complement that with e-commerce. That is working. The other is the ride delivery to a certain degree, ordering food. And that was prompted up by COVID. The other is access to goods from outside, because we've always been an import-driven nation. And of all of those, the one that continues to work is allowing people to shop online from overseas, because people are always going to see something online and say, but here locally, they're charging me 3 times the price. Better I buy it online. That business has been tried and tested. But when you become a shipping and handling company in that wheel, And also don't forget, when you're doing a shipping, that type of e-commerce company, it's not pure tech. It's tech that you need factories. You need bigger warehouses. The amount of conversations you're having with ZRA, it starts to amount. Whereas if I start an electronic tolling business, which is digital, I can go from 0 to 600 million in no time. If I say I want to sell fuel, I don't need to go and build another office. I don't need to hire additional employees. In fact, if anything, I've already got my core business, which is my bread and butter. So anything we can launch going forward becomes incremental revenue. And for the purposes of diversification, including making people that say, but you're only a one-trick pony, you got to start trying to bring in. But it's also about the end game as well. Look, I've been around capital markets. I've seen how capital works. So for me, my end game is, okay, we're doing the IPO now. And if we sort of have success, it's well subscribed, and we start to perform as management and we get traction and our valuation grows, what we can then do after, we don't talk about greenfield anymore, building things from scratch. At that point, the conversation becomes, what can we buy to grow? What can we push government to do? Because people are talking about PPPs and how we're not participating, but I'm like, well, what if I can gather? You talked about, sort of village banking, collective investment schemes. My vision is, and I've said this now, if we do this IPO, and I hope I do not get fined by the rate for saying this, but if I've got an application that is one person offering me 100,000 and I've got a village banking group and there are 80 people under that, I am going to take the village banking group's money because they help my end goal. And that's how we are sort of looking at it. So down the road, if I say, you know what, we're thinking about acquiring a business in South Africa, there's opportunity there. Or if I turn around and say, you know what, government, you're thinking about updating this infrastructure. You don't have the money to do it. Let's do a PPP. It's going to cost $30-40 million to do. This first step is where you can now turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to go to the capital markets to do it because I've built the track record and the credibility to do it. And that becomes the end goal.
You disappeared from the media space for almost 10 years. What was that about?
Media?
Yeah, I was in the news. You were in the news almost every week between 2011 to about 2015-16. Then you just disappeared. What was that about?
So one, I've always been introverted. Never liked, I know it seems counterintuitive, I was in sales, but even I can talk about my sales days on Wall Street. It was hard for me. When you're an introvert, being fired up every day, you got to call these people. Half of them will curse you out because remember, the way we sold on Wall Street is you are given a lead list, and you are told, hey, start calling, start dialing. If you're in the office, you got to make at least 40 phone calls, that day. To people, they will curse you out and do whatnot. That was hard for me. Similar media appearances were also very hard because I just want to be home and I just want to be quiet. But I think the other reason I that was one. And two, I'd sort of arrived where I'm like, okay, we've raised the money. People sort of know the company. I don't need to be, so I can afford, to do that. So I just didn't want to do it. And I just wanted to be left alone. And also we were in trouble in 2017. I just wanted to put my head down and just work. And the other factor is these entrepreneurship forums. The weird thing is after 19 years, they haven't changed. When you go to these entrepreneurship events, I can tell you for a T what's going to happen. First and foremost, all the entrepreneurs are going to talk about capital being hard to raise. That's going to be the first thing. Okay. The second is they're going to complain about we do not have opportunities in this country. They're all going to foreigners. We need opportunity. That's going to be the second. Someone is going to, praise government for creating an enabling environment and say this is how you can make a more enabling environment. Someone who is going to say this is how we've created an enabling environment. And it's been the same conversation over and over. Now, I'm not saying that these issues are not real. They absolutely are. But we've been talking about them for years, on repeat for years. And at a certain time, you have to accept how the system works. No one is going to give you capital. You're not going to pray, capital this, here's money. It doesn't work like that. All you can do is say, okay, my challenge is I need capital. This is how the rules of the game work. This is how I'm going to try and navigate. That's all you can do. I'm going to do this and do that. And so that sort of became my mantra. I just wanted to put my head down and work. And hopefully when people say, oh, where have you been? You can come back and say, well, over the last couple of years, this is what I've done. And this is what I'm going to do going forward. And so you factor all of those things together. And I just said, look, I don't want to be in the limelight. I don't want, I just want to focus on doing what I need to do, building this company and sort of go from there. So I think that's really the history as to where have I been, because I'm getting that a lot. Like, dude, we haven't seen you in years.
Yeah.
You're not at these events. And yeah, that's effectively how it went down,
In the tech space, I kind of feel like everybody knows everybody.
Yeah,
right.
We do.
And I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine that see that the guys from Bongo Hive, or what's the lady from Tech Trends?
Sandy.
Chimpala.
Hey, shout out to the guys from Bongo. I mean, they've been doing this a while.
Yeah,
they've been doing
a
this
long time.
They've been doing it a long
you
time.
have Roy, Pro-Based in. There's you.
Yep.
There's Mangala.
Yep.
Who am I leaving out?
Neko, probably, because what you're referring to is the Zambian.
Yeah, I'm talking about Zambian.
Yeah, the Zambian tech space. Yeah, it's a small community. Yeah, very small.
Friday has been doing this for a long time.
Yeah,
and he's not a developer.
He's not a developer. Yep. So I think people are starting to pick up on what it takes to run a tech company. Yeah.
Yeah. Mangala is.
Yep.
Mangala is Hobbiton.
Yep.
Who do you think is doing it right in the Zambian tech space?
No, that would be unfair, because I think it's everyone. And I think what I love what I love about the examples that you've given is that they've basically created Zambian solutions by Zambians.
I forgot Wallace as well.
He's gone a little quiet.
Afri Delivery is not a delivery company.
No.
It's a tech company.
It is a tech company. Just like we are not an Ito company, we are a tech company. Yeah. Sometimes when you're sort of pigeonholed to one company, people know you by that product. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Oh, Facebook, they're a media company. No, they're literally a tech company. Right. So I think you sort of fall into that bracket.
So back to my question.
Yeah.
Who do you think is doing it right?
Who are the guys that are doing the sort of the what do you call it? The Village Banking Unit Investment Trust. My goodness, the name has escaped me.
It's not Patumba?
It is Katumba, yeah.
That's Hobbiton. That's Mangala.
Yeah, them. I would absolutely.
Patumba.
Yeah.
Patumba, yeah. I see that one, yeah.
What they're doing behind the scenes, the ecosystem that they've built, absolutely brilliant. And and the reason why that is impressive, it speaks to sort of the way even we're thinking about the IPO. When everyone wants to raise big money, they go to the big pocketed guys. And what they do is they ignore everyone else down at the bottom. He's been able to say, you know what? Forget the big guys, forget the big institutions. I'm going to make a business by gathering Zambians together, putting their capital together, and I'm going to make something work.
Do you know how many people have signed up for that?
No, I've heard crazy numbers.
1 million.
Yes.
Yeah. A month active. Yeah. Yes. So there's more, but the active ones are 1 million.
Yeah.
And because I was just looking at his numbers, right? Because again, I keep an eye on people that are in tech.
Yeah.
He's doing a little over 6 million a week in revenue.
Yeah. And this is why we went back to saying, don't be fooled in tech. Don't be fooled by the big numbers. You do big numbers and then what it flows down.
But don't you think a company like that really is the ones that really need to,
go public?
IPO? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think people have been a little bit hesitant. What I'm hearing now, and I think we heard this a couple of weeks back, that all of a sudden people have heard that I'm doing it. All of a sudden people are now waking up and saying, we now need to think. So remember what I said, that even at the beginning, I knew when I was going to do this, there was going to be a certain element that would say, let's wait and see how he does. If it's well, we will follow suit. And if they are the right company, and tech is always right for an IPO. Maybe energy as well, agriculture, mining. Maybe others will start to follow suit. And what would probably want to see if now government sort of wakes up and says, you know what, if we want local capital, and one of the issues, I'm taking a bit of a tangent here, and I think I spoke about it. One of the big grievances I have right now is my tax bill from ZRA. I'm going to make 15 million kwacha in about profit. I owe ZRA 6.5 million that they want before the end of the year.
What's the revenue that you're making?
Pardon?
On the 15 million.
So the 15 million is actually our profit.
Yeah. So what's the revenue on that? What's the turnover?
No, the turnover was the 630 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is what for the year.
For the year. Yes.
Okay.
So we already know that this year we're going to do 15. And so with ZRA, the way the way the 6.5 million is kind of coming together is we paid our income tax for last year. Then they fined us. Oh my goodness. For not paying the right provision or tax. So they added a little $500,000 on top of that.
How much? 16 million?
Pardon?
How much was your tax on that?
No. So from our profit last year, I paid 1.5 million. So after I paid 1.5 million in income tax this year, I got a fine from ZRA saying you did not guess your provision or tax correctly the year before. So we're going to charge you $500,000 in fines for doing that. And then you're going to make 15 million kwacha this year. But you know what? Even though your taxes are due next year, we want your taxes
this year.
We want it now.
Which is how much?
4.5 million.
He came on here and he was showing off numbers.
Yeah.
And the tax man came after him and said,
yeah. You see, I could say
we
this
were
because
watching the podcast too.
Well, that was an interesting episode, bro.
There was, God, I need to send this to you. There's a meme that I always use of this guy who's in a South African soapy, who's drooling, who's going, nah.
Yeah.
That was it, Ray. Big numbers.
So look, I want to make this crystal clear, even for ZRA if you're listening. I am not against paying taxes, but I also know behind the scenes how things would work. So for example, if a foreign investor came in and wanted to buy us out, and we've had offers to buy us out before, if they bought us in and saying they're going to invest more than $500,000, there are certain loopholes that they could take advantage of. First, they get a tax break for the next 5, so they can continue to grow without facing any of the tax that we have. Second, even from their multinational structure, there are games that they can play to just say, we're not making any money in Zambia and we will not pay at all. Now for
declare
us,
losses every year.
Declare losses every year.
Yeah.
Those are the games that they can play. And we know that that's how those games are played. Now, what I'm saying is, look, I've chosen to go to the capital markets and raise money from ordinary people, you and me. But why should they be discrimination where the capital comes from? Why should they get a set of rules to play by and we get a different? So it's almost like we're our own worst enemy. So even when I talk about, look, let's go, but we've got to test this. Let's go public, because remember that, and I think we remind every entrepreneur, one of the reasons we want to go public is that the stature of a public company, even the risk associated with it, is very different from when it's you and me. You talked about government reach and whatnot. But you are a public company owned by thousands of shareholders, ordinary Zambians. As a government politically, do you really want to go and dismantle and break up a public company talking about, paying their taxes and whatnot? So what I'm saying is, look, I do not mind paying. In fact, I want the conversation to be a couple of years from now that our tax bill is 100 million kwacha and that's what we're fighting over. But if you are choking me, because think of what I can do with that 6.5 million this year if I had a waiver to say, hey, look, this is where I want to get to. I am hiring X number. I had, before 3 months ago, I had 13 employees. Now I've got 38. Because now we've moved away from sort of running the company lean and trying to make all the investors happy. Now we've said, look, we've built the track record. Let's now staffing up to the company we want to become. And so all of a sudden, over the last couple of months, we've hired more and more people. Why don't you want Mocha to do that? And I think that's a debate we can continue to have with policymakers.
Why don't Zambian companies ever get tax holidays, tax breaks for 5 years?
Yeah, there are rules around, look, and I don't want to say there are there. So for example, if you move into an economic zone, you can get certain whatever, but tech it doesn't count. We do not fit in that group.
Brother.
Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
You recently hired a CFO.
Yes.
About 2 days ago.
Yes, we did.
So who was running your books all this time?
No, actually the same CFO, but as a consultant.
So such a large company didn't have a CFO?
No, we didn't. Well, first of all, I have a degree in finance, remember? My background is finance.
So you can handle that.
I can handle that.
So the fact that your degree is in finance, isn't it also key that you needed audited financials for 2023?
So we have auditors.
For last year?
Yeah, no, so we have auditors.
What about the year before?
Our audits go back 9 years, from 2015.
Really?
I've got 9 years of operating history. I've got, 9 years of audited financials.
Yeah, because
I've got a 5-year plan.
You can't list, right?
You can't list, without all of that stuff. Well, they try and make rules, and I think there's a whole conversation about what they say should happen and what we went through. Because remember, no one has ever done this transaction before. And I think there will be feedback to the regulators. Now, to my credit, all the regulators have been amazing trying to get this over the line, but there have been issues around. So for example, you might say that, to go on the alternative market, you actually don't need audited financials. You know, you only need
Management accounts
for 1 year and a business plan. But then the regulators are saying, no. Show us audited financials for 3 years. And on top of that, we want you to go back and bring in a third party independent reporting accountant to come in and look through your numbers as well, which is a little bit overkill, but that's what the law says. So someone who now tries to list going that, they're going to stumble because the intent and what the laws and the regulations say are actually very, very different. Yeah. We go back all the way. And also the other thing is, the way we did so the way we worked with our CFO is she had a consultancy company that supported small businesses. So we're not our only client. She had others. And I remember the way we brought her back is I met her in the Kukula days. She was the lead on it. And I remember calling her back because I'd probably gone through 4 or 5 accountants and I was just not happy with the way our books were being run. And the thing is, if you're an accountant, you should know the numbers. So if you bring me something and I can look at it and say, dude, this is not right. How can you be our accountant and not know our own business and run the numbers properly? So I got frustrated and I brought her in. And what we did is we ended up having where our accounting department was outsourced. And there are a couple of, now I know that might seem counterintuitive, but the way in which it worked. So for example, our accounting is done outside of the company. That doesn't mean that we don't have people in our running the, billing clients, receiving money, looking at the bank accounts and editing. We do that, but it's a layer of control. So what would happen is, for example, if I want to make a payment outside of the company, I can't do it alone. And technically, I don't handle that. We have someone in the company that would handle a payment, for example. When they handle that payment, they then have to contact the outside accounting company and say, hey, I've done A, B, C, D. Can you also counter check on it and authorize the transaction? Right. The other reason is also sensitivity in transactions. If you're paying what I'm getting paid, I don't want my staff members knowing what what my pay is. So if it's done by an outside, and other companies do this all the time. Like payroll will be run by, so when you hear, people think of auditors as just companies that do it. No, they do other things, including executive pay, because you don't want you don't want certain payments sort of just being public record around the office. And so you do come up with structures like that. They would also do what's called independent reporting. So I would prepare the financial statements. They would then pick that up and say everything, and then they would re-prepare, send it to our board. So it's also a layer of governance and control. And that's why you would do that.
I get it. Yeah. Last question. We have RDA and we have NRFA. And NRFA's sole mandate is collections.
Yes.
And if you've gone through the Auditor General's report, and you've seen how much that organization has lost, whether it's in paying out suppliers, hefty payouts to directors, massive overheads, etc. Doesn't it make sense to have this as a department under RDA, who really are the ones that are creating the product, which are the roads that NRFA is collecting?
Look, I'm not the expert on this.
That's your opinion.
But from a governance perspective, what you're talking about, what you've just proposed, is you being a referee and a player in the same, in the same game. So what effectively you're saying is that RDA will be responsible for determining what roads and whatever will be, and then they'll be in charge of also determining
what roads what
roads are constructed and what contractors in it work. So NRFA was created as a financial oversight body of how road construction is done, including how financing is done. If you give it to RDA, I think the challenge that you run into is that your governance falls apart a little bit.
How so?
Because it's basically they are effectively one and the same. And part of why the change came about is, where do a lot of our road funding comes from? It comes from bilateral agreements and donors. So they said, if we're going to pump in a particular road, there was a particular structure that they wanted done where there is. Now, I'm not saying it's the wrong structure. What you propose, you could make an argument for.
No, because we're looking at how much money is going into running this organization, right? Versus how much money is being generated by a product which is being created by another entity.
So I think the metaphor I could give is NRFA is very similar to what we did with our outsourced accounting firm. They're our watchdog, if you will. NRFA is just it's an administrative office for road construction. They look after all the disbursements, all the money. When the toll money comes in, they're responsible for getting it to the treasury. Ask RDA to do it. And I think there are some governance arguments that can be made. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I think that from the outside looking in, that's how I would look at it.
But do you think more money would be saved if it's going to be a department?
No. I think it's going to go down. Look, I think every government department you look at has inefficiency. And I think the bigger question is, how do we make our institutions stronger? As opposed to, let's do ABC. Because, we've been beating a dead horse around when it comes to, but look, and this is not a Zambian government problem. It's a worldwide. I mean, look at what Elon Musk and Trump tried to do in the US with their Dodge. Because all government, because of the are inherently inefficient. Just because of the way the bureaucracy works around that. The only thing we lack, perhaps in Zambia and perhaps Africa, is that our institutions are not strong enough. Yeah. They are subject to political influence, for better or for worse. And it's got to be, and I think as people, we got to have the conversations. How do we make those institutions stronger? So that even if the president wants to do there's a reason why in America, the FBI can go after a president or a sitting president because of separation of power. That's what we need here to make.
Ideally.
And so, ideally. So I think even the bigger question is not whether it's an RDA thing and an NRFA thing. It's how do we make the institutions stronger? And what's the political will to make that happen?
Quick question. Yeah. Way bridges. Are there any payments that happen there? At way bridges?
Yeah, they are.
Who handles those payments?
RDA.
Was that your last question?
No, now I've got another question. Because RDA is already handling payments, which is way bridges.
They are. Yeah.
So speaking of, it basically can still translate to the same thing.
And that's why I was clear to point out that your argument is not wrong. There can be an argument for it.
So my next question again, when it comes to, because it still ties into what you're saying, and this might be a business opportunity for you.
Yeah.
If a truck is leaving South Africa and is driving through Botswana or Zimbabwe,
yes.
Do you see where I'm going with this or not yet?
No, I think you're giving away a trade secret now. I think you kind of know even where as an organization we are going. So I think we'll leave it there. There are aspects of sometimes of what we do. Yes, there are certain things we talk about that we will do. And those are the things that we are comfortable speaking about. But to your point, there are other things.
So do you want me to stop now?
Yeah, please stop now. Please stop now. We don't want to, partly because one, you don't want to give people a bit of a heads up that, hey, look, this is where these guys
because
are
I got this microphone. I've got this microphone every single week.
But here's what I will say. Here's the thing, though, and especially in tech, especially in Zambia today, you have to remind people that there's no such thing as an original idea. Every idea is an iteration of another.
Yes.
But I remember,
it's about who gets there first.
Yes. So this is where I'm gonna, I don't want to flag it, but I remember I'd met Damon John, the FUBU guy, in the entrepreneurship circuit. He actually said that there's no such thing as an original idea, and he said even Twitter is not original. Twitter has been around. A form of Twitter has been around for thousands of years. You know how tweets were sent back in the day? Someone would put a message on a pigeon and literally throw it out. That was a tweet. That was how you got a message across. So all someone did was package that concept and make millions off it.
Yeah.
So no such thing as and that's why even goes back to what we were debating over, that in IT, there's no such thing as intellectual property. It's just who can execute, who's good at it, who's got to know how to do it and gets there first. Or even if you get there second, if you can do it better. Because don't forget that before Facebook, there was MySpace. I remember I remember using that. Yeah. So sometimes it's not always about being first. It's just, are you better at it?
BlackBerry, Nokia.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really. Being first also counts.
No, it does
quite
count.
A lot, right?
But look at the number of companies that have sort of gone by the ways. Zona, Tragic Tale. Locally.
No, but look at it this way. No, but look at it this way.
Yeah.
Being first also helps.
Yeah.
Because the model that Zona used.
Yeah.
Remember, mobile money was there also back then.
There was, yeah.
Right?
But Zona was so dominant.
No, correct.
They should have been tapped into everything today.
And they received quite a lot of funding.
They did. Millions of dollars,
100%.
Yeah.
But going back to my original point, which I will not finish because you want to pay me, is if you saw that the president was in Zimbabwe and there were bilateral talks.
Yes.
When, like, the Chirundu border, for example, is now going to be operating 24 hours.
Yes.
The Vic Falls border is going to be operating 24 hours.
Yeah.
There's going to be, so that bottleneck of trucks coming through will not be there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think you and I have the same idea in terms of where and how tech is able to make that better.
And this goes back to, remember what we talked about, like this IPO. This IPO is more about strategic thinking. No one wants to deal with the problem is when you're your own entrepreneur, and you've talked about some of the entrepreneurs that have run into trouble here. They want that entire piece of the pie. And when they make that piece of the pie in dodgy ways, everyone is looking at them.
What did he do to you? Why are you talking to him? Why are you talking about him like this?
I'm talking about like.
We're talking about one particular person.
We're not talking about one particular person. I don't know who you are hinting at. So
you said his name.
I don't know. So people make money in a dodgy,
You commented on him too.
I didn't mention the name.
But when you are like that, and unfortunately, this is also maybe rooted in Zambia PhD syndrome. Everyone is counting your money when you are not. This is how this person got whatever in there. Now, I'm public. It's not my company anymore. It's a public company. You're not having a conversation about how you're going to make me rich. You're having a conversation how you're going to make up, them rich, including the pensioners or the workers if they own a piece of that pie. It's a very different, and to be honest, we've not tested this enough because a lot of the companies that are listed on the exchange are these legacy sort of big infrastructure, whatever. Yeah. This is the first time where even I said that, co-ops and all that, they have their place. But I know what I'm going to do is I am going to test the limits of what being a public company means. Yeah. If it means riling up my shareholders to say, we're not getting the tax breaks that we wanted, or we've been unfairly treated, make it a political night for them. Write letters. We've got now voices because I am not alone. That is something that I can do by being public. Now, if you're alone and you want to share that entire pie, you're going to fight that battle alone. But the difference is I get to fight it with hundreds of people behind me.
Wait, Elson is singing.
I am here with you.
We're going to have blisters in our ears by the end of this episode, I swear.
I know. No, but you see,
Wait, so question.
Hey. How many last questions do you have?
Wait, nigga, can you relax?
Go.
How many people in Zambia?
Yeah.
So, Kaling and I might understand what it means when a company goes public and the process around also buying shares into it. And by the way, if I buy shares, I'm a shareholder. I need to attend.
Yes, you do.
Shareholder meetings.
You need to hold me accountable.
However, that's not where my question is.
Yeah.
And that's your camera.
Yeah.
How many people, honestly, in Zambia, do you think, because now people know about bonds, do you think actually have the knowledge in knowing what exactly it means when a company goes public, what it means to buy shares, what it means about having dividends, what it means about payouts, etc. Is it a handful? Is it most Zambians?
Funny enough, I know the exact answer. It's 1 in 10 Zambians. 10% of Zambians. 1 in 10.
If you ask how many people saw the Kazari sex tape though?
10 in 10?
Yeah. Probably a little higher than 1 in 10.
How can we? No. I say this with a tear in my eye.
Yeah.
How then can we convert that so that the next time you and I have this conversation, 1 in 3,
1 in 3,
know about this. They're educated. They know how to go about it. Because right now, if I want to buy shares, for example, where do I go? Do I go to ShopRite?
Yep. No, and you'd be absolutely spot on. The 1 in 10 number is just it. And a lot of it is because you and me have been ignored by the market. I think they're trying to do a little bit more around it. That was why I even made a point that with our IPO, we are doing a very retail focused. Part of it is because of our size, but I am not going to the usual suspect to say, give me the money. I want everyday people to understand. Now, here's a trick that I learned from when I was on Wall Street, when they used to tell us that if you want to sell someone an investment, there are 2 ways you do it. There are 2 emotions you need to tap into. And your skill to do that will determine whether they invest or not. It's fear or greed. Now, where do you see greed working? Yelama schemes, those Pisha that watch an advert will give you 500 kwacha and you'll make, all those people did was tapped into the psychology of greed to get people to invest. But people need to be a little bit more financial literate about what's a good investment, what is not. This is how I need to structure. We also need to stop thinking about real estate as the end or be all. Everyone's aspiration is
build a house.
That is my investment. Let me have a block of flats. It goes way beyond that. But that's the financial literacy question. And so we hope that through this IPO, we will do our part, but then soon other people, the wheels, because remember the sectors that I talked about, not only tech, manufacturing, agriculture, energy. If others start to say, you know what? I kind of understand what he did. Let me educate myself on what it takes to grow. Because if you're going to grow, you need capital. You need serious capital. If you're going to grow, there's a reason why the biggest companies in the world are publicly listed. You need capital. You just, even our country, what are we always crying about? Capital. FDI. We need foreign to come in. All I'm trying to do is change the conversation to say, what happens if the three of us get 80 other people? We're credible. People trust us as an entrepreneur. We've got our governance structures right. Okay. How can we then say we're going to do this venture? So whether that argument around, Zambians are not running mines, we're not running, fine, it's a valid argument, but what are we doing about it?
I don't have any more questions. I'm done. Well, I do, but then listen, this will be like a 4-hour episode.
Yeah,
We've been running for 1 hour, 41 minutes.
My last question though. Yeah. Just from this episode, one can tell you've got like so many plans, so many things that you want to achieve in your life.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you could live forever, would you? If yes, why? If not, why not?
No, come on. I think to a certain degree, you know why death is so scary? Because it's unknown. There are a number of different religions out there and, someone's got to be right. Whether it's the atheists, whether it's the Christians, whether it's the Muslims, someone is right. But I think the common denominator around religion is that you've got to believe in something greater than yourself. That is why I am a Christian. Even when I look at my life, some of those turning points, there I am, working my ass off in a factory somewhere, not knowing how I'm going to pay a tuition. But I'm there and I'd like to think that, God sort of looked down and said, you know what? His heart's in the right place. This is not him, but, and I remember that I used to pray a lot, still pray, but it would be like, look, just give me strength to do whatever it is you have planned for me. Give me the strength to do it. And all of a sudden things opened up, coming back, because everything that I've done has been against the odds. Going to school the way in which I did, getting my education, rising the way I did in corporate America, even coming back, even with .com, raising how hard it was to raise that $500,000. It was hard. Even this IP, how hard it is. Yeah. But I also think that is what drives me, because I'm saying that, look, I want to do something great. Do I want to live forever? No, I think that would be insensitive to think that. I think all you can do is look back. And even one of the reasons we're making some of the changes in .com, bringing in a chief operating officer to handle the day-to-day, is to start thinking about, look, I've done my part. And, I'm perfectly fine. If the new shareholders going forward, turn around and say, you know what? I think your skill set, now Bella. If we really want to move up to the next level, and I am perfectly fine with that, because I can look back and say everything that I've done is A, B, C, D, and I am happy where I am. In fact, to a certain degree, I'm like, dude, I'm tired. You know how much of a grind it's been the last 10 years? Even to go from, from 30 million to 600 million. How door to door, how many doors I had to knock on, how much convincing I had to do.
How much brown nose you have to have.
How much brown, and especially because I didn't do it this way of, I'm going to get that sale because I've got an uncle somewhere who can introduce me to the whatever. Nah, it was just go to Zambia, go to Ndola, go door to door, every industrial area. Hey, guys, do you have a trucking company? Hey, this is how I can optimize your operations. Accountants, are you frustrated? This is how I can digitize it. And that was how I did it one by one. There was no, that. So I think I'm proud of where I am. I'm really proud of the IPO in itself, because I feel for me that is like a capstone milestone. Now we're ready for the next round. What do we do next? And I think the ride, remember, the first million is the hardest to make.
True.
First million is the hardest to make.
There's a book that I read called The Tipping Point.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
I'm actually reading that right now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I've got a trivia question for the both of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions. All right. So both of you will take this. Question number 1. Which artist became the youngest person to ever win Album of the Year at the Grammys?
At the Grammys.
Who? Tyler?
Not Tyler.
Was it Album of the Year? No, that was Song of the Year, eh?
It's going to be someone young.
She's white.
Taylor
and
Swift.
It's a she. No. Good guess, though.
No, because I knew it was white. It's got to be someone who was a teen.
No, and I recently saw her photos. She is looking thick.
Really?
Billie Eilish.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was in the same ballpark. Okay. I'll
in
take
which
half the
city
credit.
did the genre called Afrobeats first explode into mainstream? City.
The problem is you're going to narrow it down to somewhere in Nigeria. I'm going to go with... This is where now you get shown up with your geography here. I don't want to say the capital. Oh my goodness, what's that second?
Don't second guess yourself.
Okay, Lagos.
Bingo.
Okay. All right. I was overthinking.
What is the most streamed song on Spotify of all time?
Halo.
Kiki.
By who? By Beyonce? No.
Kiki, Drake.
Drake? No. It's Blinding Lights by The Weeknd.
Really? Oh.
So you had the Canadian part right.
Yeah.
Which African artist was the first to reach 1 billion streams across all platforms?
Davido.
Kid?
No. You say what? Sneaker says Diamond. No, it's Burna Boy.
Okay.
Gob got it right, but Gob was like mouthing it. Which Zambian artist was the first to sell out a major stadium?
Zambian artist.
Which Zambian artist was the first to sell out a major stadium? Hell no.
Stadium.
Oh, no. Stadium.
Who?
No.
Somebody's not big in Zambia.
But did that happen in Zambia?
Yes.
In Zambia.
I don't know.
Zambia.
It just said,
Would've been what?
it
Woodland
just said
Heroes? I'm
which
trying to
African
remember.
artist was the first, which Zambian artist was the first to sell out a major stadium? Yes. Oh, yeah, actually, yes. No. Well, here it says it's Market 2.
No, which stadium?
Heroes.
No, it's Maps.
When?
Last year.
23.
So are you saying nobody did it before then?
Yes, nobody did.
He even remembers the exact date.
The exact
27th
date.
May,
No, you can't-
2023.
You can't argue with that.
Okay, all right. We'll do our fact check. Who is the best-selling female artist in history?
I'm going to go with Madonna.
Spot on.
Yeah. Okay.
Madonna.
It is Madonna.
It is Madonna, yeah. Process of
Interesting.
elimination, yeah.
What is the name of a 6-string instrument played by plucking? 6
Guitar?
strings.
Name's gone.
Or what?
A guitar?
A guitar. Which singer released an album called Lemonade?
Beyonce.
Who wrote Romeo and Juliet?
Shakespeare?
Lemonade.
Bill Shakespeare. Also need to cut it. I'm running out of space here.
Okay, cool. I'll answer 2 more questions. I'll ask 2 more questions. Which country invented the paper?
Egypt?
Nope.
China.
China.
Okay.
And the last one, which continent has the most countries? Oh,
Not Africa.
it is Africa.
It is
Africa.
Africa.
Yeah.
This was a great episode. Our guest is now sweating, so this is a sign that we need to go.
You've put me to
Mawano,
work.
thanks a lot for coming
he's
through,
grilled,
man.
No, he's grilled me as any, and I'm getting, it's training for what is to come because now everyone gets to grill me. What's your company all about? So I'm ready. Think of it as prep work.
Yeah. No, I was hard on you because you have built something beautiful,
Remarkable.
and the public is going to be buying into it.
Yeah.
So 2 things you don't
I'm
mess
buying
with.
into it.
Yeah.
2 things you don't mess with is people's money and people's health.
Absolutely.
So if anybody is to be in that seat who wants to sell or take people's money or give health, you sort of have to
No, like
face really tough questions.
No, and you're right. And I cannot guarantee the outcome because we're not allowed to say we can guarantee
No, of
what
course.
the future will.
You're not a
But I think,
sangoma.
but all I
We'll
can
take
do,
the risk. We believe in you, we'll take the risk.
And that's all I can ask, and just promise that I will put in 110%. Because I know what this is, and everything checks out. Our people, our process, even our performance, where we've come from, where we're
PPP.
going, and that is it. PPP.
Mawano, thanks a lot for coming through,
you.
man.
Thanks a lot, my man.
All right,
All right,
appreciate it.
Yep.
To the next one.
So wait, when is this airing? This Tuesday? So we need to have the 3-step cartel on the next episode. Because we keep saying this. No! We're pushing. So the next episode after this one is 3-step cartel.